So, I'm gonna warn y'all straight from the bat, this video may get a little sidetracked and jumpy, and you know, that's fine. If you want the information though, it's here. I don't expect this to be a short video at all, because this is something I just started to figure out yesterday, and I want to share it with y'all because I think it's such an interesting part of psychology, and I love psychology. You know, I'm no major, I'm no nothing special, so I'm not claiming anything on that. But what I know about psychology comes from either the high school course I took for a semester and just personal experience and knowledge. And of course, you know, other people who do teach psychology on YouTube and such, I do pay attention to them. But something I discovered yesterday through my personal experience, and I want to share with y'all. If you guys don't like sidetrack jumpiness, click off the video. But if you can handle it and you like hearing me talk, this is the video for you. So, lately, there's a lot of what we know, a lot of what we feel is a result of our stories. Yes? A lot of what we know and do comes from the stories we tell ourselves. Now, I know some of y'all may have heard this before, especially if you're on my channel. If you haven't, basically, in a simple context, whatever you believe is ultimately what you will create, right? And I talked about this in another video, and you know, I talked about this in one of my last recent videos. You know, the thoughts you believe, you become a vibrational match with that, it becomes reality. Interesting enough, the story you tell yourself, whatever you believe is never wrong. Never, ever, ever. It may not fit a certain reality that you're in, but the stories that you believe, that you create, are never wrong. Especially, you know, sometimes when you naturally try to cope, your stories that you believe are essential for your survival. Even if in someone else's eyes it's not legitimate survival, in your mind, in your development, in who you are, that story you believe is essential for your survival. And it'll protect you on a physical realm, it'll protect you on a mental realm, it'll protect you on a emotional realm. This is a lot of why sometimes, you know, like self-hate happens, right? Or where we believe that, you know, coping mechanisms fall into this category because of stories we tell ourselves. And, you know, whatever you believe, ultimately the thoughts that you harbor and the thoughts that you become that vibrational match with, you can end up forming an entire story that could just boil down to a sentence or two as to the reality that you believe in, or the reality that you are a part of, and how you're going to handle it and how you're living in it, right? Essentially. And I'm just trying to make sure my dad doesn't catch me. I snuck out. No, I'm just kidding. But whatever happens in your life, right? Whatever happens, especially traumatic events, this is really true for. Whenever pain is caused on a physical, mental, emotional level, if it is severe enough, you will create stories, or a story that'll boil down to a very short context. It'll take in a large variety of things just to boil down to a simple context. That basically, whatever reality you're living in, this is what we have to understand in order to survive it. This is why whatever you're thinking is never wrong. This is why whatever you're believing is never wrong. This is why whatever you feel is never wrong. It's not a problem. It's not an issue. It is a story that was guaranteed for your survival. This story came into play. Because because this is the story that was designated to save your life from whatever caused you that pain on that physical, mental, and emotional plane. That story came in saying, this is how we have to deal with this in order to save this person's life. And I know some of y'all think, no, it's not that deep. No, it's that deep, bro. It's that deep. Humans are survival. We live on survival. And the stories we tell ourselves guarantee our survival. Every time. So, this is where, whenever we tend to believe certain things and stuff like that, stories are coming to play. So, why am I bringing this up? I've got you essentially established on the context of a story that you believe, right? Like, for example, if my dad used to beat me a lot when I was a kid, right? And he used to tell me I'll never amount to be a man unless I stop crying and, you know, I man the fuck up, right? Now, that happens a lot when I'm young, because when we're young, we're very vulnerable. We're the most vulnerable we can be. Okay? You know, in a way. But essentially, if that event happens, and it happens over time, that's causing me pain on an emotional level because I feel like I'm not being taken in love. That's physical, because that shit really hurts and my body wants to protect itself. And mentally, that harms me because I am in a position that my father has an issue with me. And that hurts. That would hurt, right? I'm doing something wrong. So, essentially, in order to survive this household you placed in, and then in order to survive this situation, this life that your father has placed you in, you're going to develop a story. Now, a common story, I just throwing a general one out there, you can develop thousands of stories in order to survive this situation, depending on how you go about it. Well, I'll just take a simple general one. I'm not going to go into the millions of them, but let's take a simple general one. I have to be hard-hearted and prove myself in order to be a man for my father. It's a very simple idea, you know? Be very hard. Be hard to be strong for your father. It's a simple idea. But when you take into consideration all the things that happened, that were thought, that were physically destroyed, right? All the things that were taken into account, you're talking about a lot that came in just to form that one idea that as long as you were hard-hearted and lived to prove to your dad that you were a man, right? Because that's what he was trying to teach you. Your dad was just trying to teach you to become a man. He never hurt you because, you know, he had an issue with you. He was just trying to teach you to become a man. Now, a lot of y'all thinking, no, that's fucked up, that's abuse. But that's what we do to ourselves. So now he goes on for the rest of his life, always having to prove himself to men around him, older, preferably even bigger guys, you know, figures, you know, physically. He may have a tendency to really have an ego, a big one, especially with guys, man. You know, he may have a tendency to always feel a need to prove himself when there's competition and stuff like that. He may take that very hard to heart if he loses because he feels like he's not proving himself to the root, his father. But then, you know, we look at it and we're like, yo, man, it's just a game. But it's not just a game to him. This is proving himself to his father. Even if he's not even realizing that. In the subconscious, he's always remembering, I have to prove to my father that I'm a fucking man. So that way, I don't get hurt. I have to harden, right? A woman breaks your heart, guess what? Fuck that bitch. I don't give a fuck about a motherfucking hoe. I'm a man, you know? That's hard. You're trying to be hard for your father. The situation alone is what you're reacting, but the reaction is based off of the story that you have to be hard-hearted and you have to prove to your father that you're a man. And that sits in your subconscious a long time. This is where psychoanalysis comes in, where that trauma has to be dealt with directly, where you have to deal with the father, right? You have to understand the father. You have to understand what happened because, you know, as we get older, we become more disconnected because, you know, let's say 5 years later, our father stopped hitting us. He realized what he was doing was wrong. And he even reassured us, like, you know, we're sorry, kid. It's not like that. I was a drunkard. I was fucking stupid. Whatever motivation he had for beating you, right? You essentially, that story still exists. I don't care how many times he reassures you he loves you and he would never hit you again. And let's say he never does hit you again. But let's say you tend to always have a fear that he's going to hurt you. You tend to always worry, like, is he going to attack me? Is he going to jump at me? Like, what's going to happen? Am I safe with this man? You know? Or, you know, you're constantly always having to prove things. So you're probably getting in arguments with him maybe. Or maybe you're always leaving the house. Or whatever. There's so many actions that could take place here in order to continue to prove to your father that you're a man, even when he's not hitting you and hurting you anymore for per se not being one. Because now, since that's no longer your reality, Because you're so invested in that story, and that story's kept you alive for that long, you have no reason to ditch it. Even if he's assured you it's kept you alive, and you emotionally have become invested in the story, that it's kept you okay. And because it's keeping you okay, you know, it's almost like, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? But because that's no longer your reality, it will affect other fields of your life that will detriment it, that will cause that pain to extend, that will cause other people to suffer what you didn't confront. And that's where it's considered an issue. That's where it's considered a problem, right? It's not wrong, because at one point, this is what kept you alive. But that's not the reality. But because that reality doesn't exist anymore, you no longer need that story. So that's the mechanism. That's the story you chose to take in. Now, what happens to happen? I made a video a long time ago. I'm going to link it down below, along with the Thoughts That Become Reality video. Understand it before you fix it. This is what anyone would have to do in a situation like this. Whenever you face a traumatic situation like this, and that story is formed, and it has to be reconfronted, what you have to do is you have to essentially do psychoanalysis, right? And Teal Swan has a method that's very similar. And I will link that in the description is below. How to Heal the Emotional Body. Where basically, I need that person who's been abused by his father and believes that he has to prove himself constantly to be a man because of all the things that take place. He has to confront the emotions that show up when he feels the need to. He has to be honest about the way he feels. He has to be honest about who he is. He has to be honest about what he's trying to do. And that's an uncomfortable process, because not many people can deal with the fact that they were hurt. Not many people can deal with the fact that this happened to them, right? So now they're in that situation. It's detrimenting areas of my life. Why? Because my reality is different. I have nothing to prove. I'm not being beat by a father anymore. Men aren't challenging me. And if they are, it's probably, you know, what need is there? There's things... The reality is that your father loves you and he's not hurting you anymore. He's not hurting you. So why does the story still exist even when you become emotionally invested in it? There's no need for the story anymore. And that's when it's time to get rid of it. However, you can't just get rid of it. Don't just say, oh, I need to change it. No, before you change anything, I need you to understand it. Go watch an entire video before you continue on with this rest of this video. Go watch that entire 5-minute, 55-second video and then come back. I'm gonna give you 3 seconds to click on that. Okay, now that we're back, okay, you're here with me. Now that you know the concept, you have to understand what happened. You gotta understand what happened with your father. You gotta understand what happened. You gotta understand the trauma that caused you to believe that story. And when you understand the problem, well, not the problem, but you understand what event triggered, what events and emotions and pain were involved in the creation of this story that essentially designated you to believe that you had to be a certain way that guaranteed your survival, what I want you to understand is how to let go. Confront the story, embrace it, and understand what happened. And once you understand what happened, it may take one to 5 tries on this. Once you truly understand what happened, then what I want you to do is understand the reality I became a part of, the reality that this story was a part of for me. In order to guarantee my survival, I don't need it anymore. This isn't the reality that's right now. It may come back in another time and I may need the story, but I don't need the story right now. I don't need it because I'm not being beat by my father. I'm not being hurt in this way anymore. I have nothing to prove. I'm a man living life. And that's what I want you guys to understand. Right? Before you go and fix that shit, understand what happened and become real close with that event in a way that you never have before. Don't try and protect yourself from it. Don't try and run from it. Understand and be with it 100% uncomfortably until you get comfortable with it. And once you become comfortable with it, once you become understanding of what it was, then you can take this next step of letting yourself know that it's okay to let this story go. This story is not serving the reality that is real. So what story do we need? Story is that I'm loved, I'm nurtured, and I have everybody that cares for me in my life right now. You take certain things into consideration. That's just the first step, right? Take a small story, believe it, take it in, bring it in as much as you can, and then what starts to happen? All of a sudden, you start to embrace that more. You start to become more peaceful. You start to become more calm, because the thoughts that you're allowing yourself to harbor now aren't involved with the pain and proving yourself. It's involved with being thankful for the ones that you love, being thankful for the ones that are there, being thankful for the reality that is serving you, being thankful for that you are living a good life. And that's the reality of you. So love it. And that's the story. So now that you've been able to take on that new story, as you believe that story, a more natural one is going to start to settle in as you take in more and more of the actual reality that you're in now instead of being in the past. As you absorb more of that reality and let go of that other one, you absorb what really is and let go of what's already done. You really absorb that now. A better story starts to fit your now. And that's the best part about it. And that's the psychology that'll serve you. And that's my rant on stories. I'm not going to go on too much longer because I got to do other things. But hopefully it's a great video. I love y'all. Talk to y'all next time.